glycemic index and glycemic load are very important aspects of, particularly diabetes in general, the nutrition, and it does affect the non-diabetic people also. So interesting part is that they have been, as we were mentioning, talked about, but not sort of so keenly and elaborately. And I'm going to talk about that. Now, this was the glycemic index, how it evolved. Is in Canada, University of Toronto, Dr. David Jenkins first thought, and he thought the exchange system perhaps is not sufficient, that I replace 50 grams of carbohydrate by another, 50 grams by this. There's something more to it. And he thought that as the assumption in exchange system was, all digested starches produce similar after meal, blood glucose, and all digested sugars produce similar after meal, was the belief which he did not agree with. He thought this is perhaps not there. This is more of a quantitative aspect, and there is something more to qualitative aspect of the carbohydrate. And that is how he thought about this. And then, why we have do only carbohydrates? Carbohydrates have GI value, and not the other. Carbohydrates are body's fuel of choice. The body chooses carbohydrates first to break down into energy, immediate energy, rather than the proteins and fats. So the glycemic index primarily pertains to carbohydrates. Now, what is glycemic index? A scale that ranks carbohydrate by how much it raises, the food raises blood glucose levels, compared to a reference, food. So this is the main, concept of, and there have been various workers, Brand, Miller, Atkins, Atkinson, and now I'll tell you what foods are there. Foods listed on glycemic index are starches, breads, breakfast, cereals, pasta, starchy vegetables, corns, legumes, peas, potatoes, winter squash, dairy products like milk, yogurt, fruits, all forms, sugars, honey, maple syrup, and what are not on the glycemic index. This is interesting. Proteins, meats, poultry, fish, eggs, cheese, fats, oil, margarine, butter, etc., shortening. So they're not there. What does the GI value mean? The glycemic index is expressed as a ratio comparing the blood glucose increase caused by a test food, say, one fruit, to that of a reference food, which is usually glucose or recently white bread also. And then this whole rise in glucose over a period of 2 hours is charted. And the thing is, both the area under curves are compared, and then we get what is called as glycemic. You can see the formula: area under the curve for test food divided by area under the curve for reference food into 100 gives us the glycemic index. And the value below 55 is considered a low GI index. Moderate is 56 to 69, and above, this is considered, 70 is considered high. Now, GI determination, what is the protocol? You give a 25, usually 50 gram of a carbohydrate of test food, and in the first hour, the blood is taken by capillary blood every 15 hours. Second hour, the blood is taken every 30 hours, and the graph is plotted. This is done for about 10 volunteers, and the average is taken. And then this is test food response. And we also do the standard thing, the reference thing is the glucose or white bread, similarly given to test 10 people, and the values, and this is done on a fasting state. And the area under the curve by the reference food, below, and the product or the food we give is taken, and the percentage of the area is taken as the glycemic index. And this is a standard protocol with see, this is a very clear pictorial picture. A product with high glycemic index, the weight rises up, but then it plummets down very quickly, and may even go into hypo, if you see. Whereas the product with low GI would be slowly digested, and the level of, glucose would go up gently and in a much less frequent fashion. So we see how a white bread of glucose compares to lentils. The graph is very clear. The sharp rise are sort of, moderate kind of rise, and the foods are ranked based on how they compare to a reference food. What are the limitations of using glyphosate? GI values were determined in studies where volunteers ate portions containing 50 grams of carbohydrate of each test, and 50 grams of carbohydrate from popcorn is 10 cups of popcorns popped, while from white rice, 50 grams about 1 cup. So the quantity, the thing could be, or the amount could vary in a huge way. There's a wide variation in values assigned to the same food by various reference systems. So that again creates a discrepancy. GI values can vary depending on many other factors, confounding factors. GI values measure the effect of a test food when that food was eaten alone. When you take food, it is usually not alone. And these other foods together would affect the GI of a product. The effect of food on blood sugar can vary from person to person. So there is same amount, same glucose, the person to person variation is also there. It also has to be thought of. A low GI value does not necessarily mean the food is a better choice. E.g., a chocolate candy bar versus a cup of brown rice. They have a similar kind of GI, but we very well know a brown rice cup would be more healthier than a chocolate candy bar. So other factors come into play. Now, what is glycemic load? Glycemic index tells the rise in sugar in the blood instantaneously after giving, whereas doesn't tell the quantity of the product. It's just the qualitative aspect of a particular food, and the glycemic load takes into account the amount of carbohydrate, which is in a common serving in addition to its glycemic index. So the glycemic index into the grams of carbohydrate per serving divided by 100 is what is called as glycemic load. Glycemic index, the quality of the food goes, but how much is it? Like watermelon would have a glycemic index of, I think, 72 or 73, but the glycemic load is very low because in a portion of, watermelon, once it is given, the amount of carbohydrate is much less, as compared to another white rice or something. The glycemic load, low values 0 to 10, moderate 11 to 19, and high glycemic load more than 20. Again, we have talked about it and see a difference. A glycemic load of a small orange, 13 grams into its GI 38, you get the glycemic load would be 5. Whereas of a large orange, again, would be 10. So the quantitative aspect comes into play. And again, 1 slice of white bread, 2 slices of white bread, and 3. See the difference. The GI is 70, but multiplied by the amount of the carbohydrate, it changes with the portion. Now, we have already talked about the values and what are the various examples of low GI foods. Unrefined grains, pulses, vegetables, milk and milk products, oats, apple, pears, oranges out of the fruits. Medium GI fruits, those between 56 to, they are like basmati rice and, the medium oats. GI more than 70 include potato, rice, refined cereals like white bread, candies, fried foods, fruit juices, etc. Now you can see the various products showing the various, glycemic indices. And here, the glycemic indices of common other, you can see the glycemic index of something, you can see the things, how grossly they vary. I can't be talking about all the things, but you have a broader outlook here. And what is the benefits of low GI diet? Now we're talking about the use. Why should be using, GI in a values? Low GI diet, number one, it helps in controlling the glycemia in diabetics and even the peaks in non-diabetics. This is a meta-analysis of 14 studies, 356 subjects, type 1 and 2 diabetes, and the various studies had a duration from a couple of weeks to a year. And then we found the low GI group had a 7.4% lowering of glycated proteins over and above as a reduction compared to the high GI diet. So it does help the glycemic control. And the HbA1c over and above is about 0.43 and maximally 0.5 benefit with low GI products vis-a-vis high GI products in this particular meta-analytic study. Now, this is the same. See very clearly the low GI has made difference, and all the studies, all the foreign studies are favoring a low GI, food vis-a-vis a high GI food. Low GI diet helps lower blood glucose level, and this is another data from Euro-DIAB-IDDM complication study, and there were about 2,000 people, range age 15 to 60 years with type 1 diabetes, and you could see with a low GI quartile, the HbA1c went to 6.04, and with the highest, there was the values of GI in the first group 58 to 78, and the other one 86 to 11, and the betterment in HbA1c very clearly obvious, almost 0.5. Now, glycemic load and cereal fiber intake in men and risk of having type 2 diabetes. So this is given, this data is of a glycemic load with cereal fiber intake on the right axis. You can see they would, the low glycemic load and a high cereal fiber decreases the new incidence of type 2 diabetes in people who consume this. This is like you will have less, less diabetes. So that is quite interesting. Again, benefits of low GI diet. Low GI diet decreases risk of diabetes. Another very famous study called Nurses Health Study, which was 6 years follow-up. The increased GI relative risk went up to 1.37. With increased glycemic load, the risk went 1.47. That means there was a 37% with the GI relative risk increase. With the glycemic load, which was high, the relative risk increased by 47%. And if the cereal fibers were increased, the risk went down by, relative risk was reduced by 38%. And if both the things were bad, there was an increased glycemic load and a low cereal fiber, then the things were very bad. The relative risk increased by almost 150%. Again, you're familiar with this trial, a very, a very famous trial called Stop NIDDM trial. It was a trial with acarbose, and you know what is acarbose? Is a anti-diabetic drug which acts on alpha-glucosidase, enzyme in the intestine. It blocks the enzyme. Disaccharides and polysaccharides are not broken into monosaccharides, and that helps, the absorption of, glucose is decreased. So this makes the milieu practically the story like a low GI situation. It's almost creating a low GI, the whole thing is created into GI, and in this particular trial, there was three things. One, it was the new onset of diabetes, which went down by 36%. There was a reduction in cardiovascular disease, which went down by 34%, and the hypertension. So this new onset, elements, clearly by reducing the GI, we got to know that onset of diabetes, hypertension onset, and CVD are reduced in this very famous trial way back published in 2003. Now, another study, this was from Harvard Medical School by Ludwig et al., in which a glycemic load on body, a 12-month study was given to 16 obese adolescents, aged 13 to 21 years. One group was given ad lib low glycemic load, and the other group energy restricted reduced fat diet. Total of 14 treatment visits with a dietitian, and treatment intensity, behavioral approaches, and the prescription identical between two groups. Changes in diet assessed by 3 and 7 day food records, and more than 85 completed the study. And this was the effect on body mass index. You can see the reduced glycemic load group, the blue, had a much better reduction BMI, and then the fat mass determined by DEXA scan also was superior in reduced glycemic, load group. So you can see the betterment in the body weight, the body mass, fat mass also was superior. Again, a slide on lipids. Lipid has been talked about at low glycemic index food does a lot to lipids. I've just shown the pertinent effect is seen on HDL. HDL is thought to be the most conclusive, element of lipids, which has been improved with GI reduction, though LDL triglycerides have been also, thought to be, shown to improve, but not statistically significant. So these are the few things. Now I'll add a point here. The studies are equivocal. A lot of studies favoring, proving that you can lose weight, you can have a decrease in, new incidence, diabetes, but then there have been contradictory studies. But in nutshell, the ADA a couple of years back, gave a consensus guideline that GI reduction and glycemic load reduction has a betterment effect on the glycemic profile. Overall, the betterment of the total outcome. So it should be thought of while prescribing the diet. And you don't have to just tell that change 50 grams of carbohydrate, this element to that element. You have to tell about the qualitative aspect also, that change to these elements, more fruits, more vegetable, whole grains, and that is it. Now, what are the factors which influence, GI? Type of starch, type of starch, the amylose bearing starch has a low GI, amylopectin having a higher GI. Kidney beans are example of amylose carrying and amylopectin carrying is russet potato, and there's a difference. So the quality, this is the how the starch is, what are the constituents make a difference. And now this is the chemical structure of amylose, amylopectin, and that makes this. Second part is the physical entrapment. You see the bran over a grain acts as a barrier that slows the enzymatic activity in digestion of starch, thus making it low GI. And all bran, pumpernickel bread, and they are examples of bran-related, low GI in food. Higher GI, basil, staple diet in West, white, it's a very refined flour kind of, bakery, a baked item. And cornflakes, very gross example, because they are very refined, without any kind of bran, have a very high, again, the physical entrapment showing what prevents, how if you refine, the bran is lost and unbran or uncovered becomes a very high GI product. Factors influencing viscosity of fiber, viscous soluble fibers transform intestinal contents into gel-like matter that slows down enzymatic activity, and you can see this changes the glycemic index. The more viscous the food, the better it is. And apple and whole wheat bread are example of increased viscosity. Sugar content also, the type of sugar, like sucrose, the sweetness will be 100, and then lactolol will be much less. The GI index changes with this also. Why? See the example. The sugar breaks into sucrose. One is glucose monosaccharide, the fructose, and fructose is a very low, index, GI index product. So whereas starch breaks into maltose and glucose plus glucose, the GI remains very high. So, frosted flakes, raisin bran would be superior than the golden grams. Fat and protein content. Fat, that means if the fat and proteins is there along with the, in a food which is composed of a combination of carbohydrate with fat and protein, it slows down the gastric emptying, that slows down digestion of starch. And a high fat and protein foods have lower GI index rather than the pure carbohydrate starchy food. You can see Peanut M&Ms, the peanuts covered with chocolate make it much low GI, whereas the cornflakes, the jelly beans are much high GI. Acid content, very interesting. Acid slows down the gastric emptying, and this slows down the digestion of starch. Now, sourdough bread, wheat bread, is a fermented bread commonly seen, not commonly used too often in India, and that is low GI because it's very acidic. And Wonder Plain white bread is non-acidic. Adding vinegar, citric, like lime or acid-containing pickles lowers the GI, of a food product. Food processing, highly processed foods require less digestion, and it raises the glucose directly, quickly. Whereas the low non-processed would have not a very steep rise in glucose, and that would be very good and lowering its GI. Old-fashioned rolled oats were good because they were non-processed, and what are commonly available quick 1 minute oats are totally processed, and the GI varies 51, 66. Cooking swells the starch molecule and softens food. The longer you cook, the more it softens and it raises the GI. And if it is cooked for a shorter period, and you have to optimize the cooking anyway, but then a prolonged cooking would lower the, would raise the GI and make it less healthy. Again, you can see the glycemic index and glycemic load of various, and you see peanuts on the top have a glycemic index of 14 and a glycemic load of about 2 or 3. So this is how the things change. Carrots have a glycemic index of 92, but again have a very low glycemic load. Pictures of low, you can see the breakfast. On the left, there are cornflakes, or if you change to oat bran, along with if you change banana to, strawberries, and orange juice to apple juice, the GI changes, the glycemic load changes. Again, the puff is changed to a, multigrain bread, and you change pear for, you take pear for those, high carbohydrate cup, and that again makes difference in the GI and the GL. Again, pretzels compared to, groundnuts would be entirely different story. See the difference. So this is how. And here we have changed a baked potato to a sweet potato, baked sweet potato, and see the difference. And I mean, these things have a lot of bearing in choosing the food and how we can alter our GI in the food. Again, vanilla wafers, very high GI GL, whereas 50-50 low glycemic chocolate chips, cookies are much better. This is a very interesting case study of Amy. She, 38-year-old administrative assistant, married but no children, height 5 feet 7 inches, weight 320 pounds, 145 kilograms, and the BMI 50, severe or morbid obesity, type 2 diabetes, and on metformin 500 milligram, and BP2 raised and on RAS inhibitors. Now, what is this? Her breakfast: a toasted bagel with cream cheese, 16-ounce orange juice, and large coffee with whole milk. Then lunch, 6-inch roast beef and cheese, sub sandwich, mayonnaise, diet Pepsi, almost half a liter, and snack. She munches all afternoon long a bag of Hershey miniature chocolate bars. Dinner, again, half box of macaroni and cheese, beef hot dogs, plus, and then snack 1.5 cup of ice cream. You can see the total calories: 6,250 calories, a carbohydrate of 666 grams, and very low protein, and fat is 46%. Now the GI 57 and glycemic load astounding 352. So this is where, and once if the diet is altered to a breakfast of 2 slices, 100% whole wheat toast, a tablespoon of natural peanut butter, all fruit jelly, and a coffee with skimmed milk. Lunch, similarly, the beef is changed to a lean meat, chicken breast, large green salad with varied fish, vegetables, and then 2 tablespoons, vinegar dressing, vinaigrette, and small boiled sweet potato. Orange diet. Snack again is changed from those, chocolates to yogurt, half cup of cherries, and the dinner too. Again, the big, red meat stuff to salmon, lemon juice, a cup of pasta, a cup of, broccoli gape, and with some olive oil. And see, the calories have suddenly become 2,150. The glycemic index has changed to 39 and glycemic load to 61. So this is how we have added low GI, low glycemic load stuff, change her total calories, and what is the results 3 years later? The weight is now only 205 pounds, 92 kg. The BMI, which was, I think, 50, is 32 now. And HbA1c has come down. The blood pressure is much better. And she's off all medicine. And see her photograph. She's a changed person to look at. So this is the impact of lowering the GI, the glycemic index, by changing foods, quantitatively as well as qualitatively, both ways. Now, GI or carbohydrate counting, there is no one diet or meal plan that works for everyone. For diabetes, the important thing is to follow a meal plan that is tailored to personal preferences and lifestyle. Research shows that both the amount and type of carbohydrate in food affect blood glucose levels. The amount is glycemic load, the type is glycemic index, and studies also show the total amount of carbohydrate in general is a stronger predictor of blood glucose, overall profile than the GI. Based on the research, for most people with diabetes, for managing the blood glucose, some type of carbohydrate counting also should come into. So combining GI, glycemic load, and carbohydrate counting will provide the best kind of benefit for achieving blood glucose goals for individuals who can and want to put extra effort into monitoring their dietary choices. And I think that is the benefit is there, and we have shown various studies, and it's being still worked on. Now, a question: meats and fats do have a GI? Yes or no? No. As I showed the category, they primarily the group which are on glycemic index, and you'll be surprised in Australia there are about 2,400 products on the glycemic index, and the labeling of glycemic index on food products in Australia is compulsory. It is not compulsory in US. So they give a lot of importance to GI, and the answer here is no. Thank you so much.